Hello everyone, and today we're going to be looking at yet another one of those fun decks that you don't really often get the chance to play on Diamond, and that's going to be Labyrinth. Labyrinth in and of itself is not necessarily a weak deck, right? It definitely has the ability to control really well, especially if they open good. The main thing that limits this deck and prevents it from becoming a real meta-relevant threat is the fact that it doesn't have a lot of comeback potential, right? As soon as you crush the deck's initial opening turn, if you have a good enough ability to counter it, then it just sort of falls apart. It doesn't have an ability to spring back, it can't generate a ton of advantage at once, so it generally isn't all that great in a longer game if it can't outright block or stun you with its opening moves. So that's going to be the biggest thing limiting it in terms of making it a meta-relevant threat. However, it is still definitely viable and definitely can steal games here. So we're going to be covering off some gameplay, a couple of wins, a couple of losses, just talking about what makes the deck good and bad, as well as doing a detailed deck profile at the end of the video, talking about the build we have, as well as why we picked the cards we have, why aren't we playing certain cards, and a couple of other variants and ideas that we are probably going to implement in separate videos that, you know, you can sort of look at going forward with the future of the deck. But anyway, if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, and you do actually enjoy watching this video throughout, then again, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If you're new to the channel and you're interested in these sorts of deck profiles, in-depth explanations, anything like that, then again, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it does help me out quite a lot, so I would appreciate it. And if you do enjoy watching, you can of course like the video. And with that, let's get into game number one. Alright, game number one here, and we have a bit of an interesting hand. It's hands like this that made us cut our Labyrinth Archfiend down to one. A very good card, love seeing it, don't like seeing two of it. But in general, it should be fine. Not the best of opening moves here. We do of course have our back row protected by the Lord of Heavenly Prisons. This guy patches up a lot of the major weaknesses of the deck in terms of being able to get utterly destroyed by the likes of your Harvey Sourdusters, Lightning Storms, Twin Twisters, anything like that. Lord of Heavenly Prisons helps out an awful lot with, so I do think running this guy at 3 is virtually mandatory. So that is great. Then we've also got the Duster, we've got Storming Mirror Force. This guy's playing a pretty interesting deck here, playing Vendred 60 card zombies, which is pretty damn cool. Got Scar of Vendred here, adding Vendred Charge to his hand from his deck, discarding a card to go into the Apprentice Illusion Magician, which in this context serves strictly as a level 6 material for the Beatrice. That is a very good idea from our opponent. Detaching material to send the Banshee from deck to graveyard, then Foolish Burial, sending the Glow Up Bloom. Our opponent has it all here. They're going to banish the Glow Up Bloom to summon a zombie here from their deck after using their Necro World Banshee. So they're going to grab their Zombie World, and then in Chain Link 1 they're going to summon out the Doom King Ballardrock, which gives our opponent quite a nasty setup here. A really good play from our opponent. They got the Royal Rare on the Zombie World. Luckily for us, we've got the Storming Mirror Force. Storming Mirror Force opening up. We are running this as a one of. And then once we activate a trap on our opponent's turn, we can activate our Labyrinth Archfiend, summoning itself out and then setting a trap card that can only be activated upon the declaration of an attack. That's why we're running Storming Mirror Force, so it can be set off of Labyrinth Archfiend's effect. That's why we only need one of it. We're not going to be trying to grab it off a trap trick. We're not doing anything like that. We're just grabbing it off of Archfiend. We do of course have the Heavy Storm Duster. Now we make a bit of a questionable play here. What we do is we wait until our turn in the draw phase in order to activate our Heavy Storm Duster. The reason being, as long as this card is face down during our opponent's turn, it was protected by Lord of Heavenly Prisons, whereas now it no longer is, because this card is no longer revealed, meaning we're going to be able to pressure him into using this card now. We couldn't have popped it during the last turn because of our Lord. So it did backfire there just slightly, but they bring out the Golden Lord. The Golden Lord isn't a massive threat to us, our Labyrinth Archfiend of course being too big for it to get over, and now we've got two of it on the field. So we're not able to go into our battle phase this turn unfortunately, so we're just simply going to end our turn and pass back to our opponent. Ace Dragon's Prison being an amazing card to pull in this particular situation. We're going to preemptively utilize this. We don't really want the Magical Hound doing any sort of shenanigans while in the graveyard. We don't want to like link summoning or anything like that off, so we're simply going to grab his Vendred Scar, Scavenger, Scar of the Vendred, banishing it and his Golden Lord, summoning out the Lord of Heavenly Prisons as well. Lord of Heavenly Prisons grabbing us Pot of Extravagance from our deck, an amazing sort of pickup, and our opponents forced to end their turn. They didn't have any more plays. Their play would have been to link summon Then we top deck into Ariana, which is a really good card. Extravagance, draw 2 in the second Ariana, which isn't too great for us. We're going to grab our field spell, the Labyrinth. We've got the infinite impermanence here, but we've got more than enough damage on board to go in for an easy kill. So there we are, 32, 3k. And there you go. So the deck definitely, it's not a complete sort of glass cannon deck. It definitely does have some offense, very heavily assisted by the Archfiend Labyrinth being able to boost itself up. Sorry, Labyrinth Archfiend being able to boost itself up so high. That's the main way in which you're going to be securing lethal, as well as, of course, using the Silver Castle. But no, really good plays all around. Very positive matchup for us. The Ace Dragon's Prison, of course, shutting these guys down. The Duster shutting these guys down. Really helpful in a lot of matchups where you're playing against very back row heavy decks like Runic that need their field spells. So all in all, very good game. Let's get into game number 2. Already getting into game 2 here, we have some decent enough options. We do grab the field spell, which is nice. We normal summon our back Jack so we can link it off into Linkuriboh, which stacks the top cards of our deck in any order we want, and then we simply set to pass. So we don't have a ton of interruption here, but we're not exactly helpless. We are going to preemptively use our Jack just to grab ourselves an Ace Dragon's Prison here. And now, why are we flipping up all of our cards now? Our opponent at this stage was trying to go into battle phase. So we knew for a fact that this guy has something in his hand that we don't like. So we're going to flip up our Welcome Labyrinth. That is a problem because it does get hit by the Ash Blossom, which is really unfortunate. Although it does meet the conditions for the summoning of the Labyrinth Archfiend. So we are able to summon out our Archfiend, of course, at the cost of giving our opponent some material off of Max C, which is very bad for us. We do summon out the Archfiend. Archfiend searches the deck for a trap card and sets it. The Fair Welcome Labyrinth goes into battle phase. Now we're going to use Ace Dragon's Prison. We're going to grab the Ash Blossom. The reason we did this, right? We know he has evenly matched. Of course he does. None of our monsters are big enough to be used as tribute for the Eradicator Epidemic Virus, so we needed another trap card in our grave of a different name. So we activate the Ace Dragon's Prison. Terrible waste of a card, I know. But we needed our attack points to go higher, above the 2500 threshold, so we could use our Epidemic Virus. We have to declare traps, even though look at our opponent's hand. Look at how juicy that spell card declaration would have been. But we have to declare trap because we knew he had evenly matched. It is unfortunate. It is a good way in which the deck can play around evenly matched. So if you were concerned about that, then there you go. We knew, of course, we were going to get hit with a Call by the Grave because we saw it in his hand. So yeah. Generally speaking, this is not a good situation to be in. We are in a very, very rough spot up against Marincess, the Triple Tactics talent, drawing 2 additional cards from the deck. We do get to check them to see if any of them are trap cards. Unfortunately, again, the Marincess Dave, look at how good that spell card hit would have been. It is tragic. It is criminal that we had to declare trap cards. But ultimately, we didn't really have much of a choice. We go Seahorse then into Sea Angel. We are going to speed this up because this combo can be quite long. They're going to grab the Battle Ocean then, link 2 off into the Anemone. Anemone then, of course, is going to target a water monster in grave and re-special summon it, link off into the Coral Triangle, which will search his deck for the trap card. Now, whenever you search your deck for a card, it is not prone to the restrictions of the Epidemic Virus, only when you draw it, so he can search for the trap card. It goes Pascalis, Blue Tang Mill, Mandarin, resummons itself out to the field. Like I said, these guys can combo for days. Bringing out the Argonaut. Argonaut's going to get powered up by his Battle Ocean. Bahamut Shark then, detaching materials to bring out the Totally Awesome. Totally Awesome getting banned soon, so I guess this guy's just getting their final licks in with Toad while they still have the chance. This card's being banned in preparation for the release of Sprite. We top deck into Welcome Labyrinth, but we know for a fact with this Toad here, there is nothing we can do. They top deck into Imperm, which we get to destroy, which is kind of neat. But ultimately, it's not going to play a factor in the deciding of this game. They're going to continue to combo off, going for lethal here. They're going to recycle back their Blue Tang, Marincess Dave, then summoning out the Pascalis from deck. Pascalis summoning out the Blue Tang milling a card. They just go on and on and on. The Blue Tang will check the top 3 of the card and add to their hand a Marincess card. They're going to use... Oh, they're not going to use anything else. They're simply going to swing. We are going to activate this simply as a... We're going down kicking and screaming here. We know that we can't win. Totally Awesome, adding itself back to the extra deck. Take 17, 22, and finally the 43. Nothing we could do there. Our opponent simply had way too much gas. The early game evenly matched. really hurts. Like I said, this deck, like I said in the intro, if you manage to whittle down the amount of interruptions that this deck has with its opening move, it becomes very easy to outmaneuver Labyrinth, right? Because they don't have very much going on. They can't generate a ton of advantage. They can't really protect themselves very well. They don't have a ton of follow-up. They need to get in control first and stay in control to win. If they lose that control, they're going to have one a hell of a time trying to get it back. That's, again, and this still is an example of that when we had to blow our load early just to stop an evenly matched, which left us with virtually nothing for follow-up. And we couldn't really have not done that, because if we didn't do that, then we simply would have lost all our cards anyway. So it was a lose-lose situation. Nothing really can be done about it. Sometimes it just happens. Let's get into game number 3. Already getting into game 3 here. Opening up Pot of Extravagance is always nice, but you're very rarely going to resolve it. In this case we do though, playing around any sort of Ash. We didn't play around it, he just didn't have it. Ariana then's going to grab the Fair Welcome Labyrinth from our decks. Considering we already had the Welcome Labyrinth and the Field Spell, there was nothing else really of any value to search, so we'd simply grab the Fair Welcome Labyrinth. Our opponent goes into their Reinforcements of the Army to grab Sky Striker, Ace, Rose, summoning out their Ray, then chaining to summon Rose. We're going to very quickly Welcome Labyrinth here. Welcome Labyrinth has the advantage of popping a card upon resolution, which basically means that he's going to have to use his Ray effect here. Ray's going to summon out Kiana. That was a good play, right? That was the play to stop this from being detrimental. We pop the Kiana off of the field spell. That's fine. Rose still makes its way back out, and then the Ray can revive itself back to the field. However, our Labyrinth is going to be able to snipe a card either on his field or out of his hand. We're feeling a little bit spicy here. We are going to try and snipe one from the hand just to see what we can possibly get. Labyrinth Archfiend bringing itself back out to the field. We're going to draw one, set one. We got the Epidemic Virus, which is of course amazing in this matchup. We pop the Afterburners in his hand. A hell of a snipe for us. We then get to grab the Storming Mirror Force from our deck. We do get destroyed by the Ghost Ogre, which is unfortunate, but ultimately it's fine. We do manage to set our Storming Mirror Force. We have quite an impressive back row here, but remember, our Epidemic Virus and our Storming Mirror Force cannot be utilized this turn. So he's going to grab back the Afterburners here, link to off into Sky Striker Zeke. Sky Striker Zeke temporarily banishing a monster from our field. Our opponent knows they're just fighting against the clock. Maneuvers popping one of our cards. Our face down cards can't be destroyed. He's going to banish one from the graveyard, so now he has enough spells in grave to utilize the full effect of Engage. Engage, grabbing the Widow Anchor, allowing him to draw an additional card, and at this point he does surrender. And you're probably wondering why. The Epidemic Virus, as you saw in the last game, has the ability to tribute a monster on your field that has 2500 attack or more, and destroy either all of your opponent's spell cards in their hand or all of their trap cards. Our opponent had no way of winning this game because they either A, would have had to keep all of their spells in hand and they all would have been destroyed by the virus, and if they tried playing a bunch of them face down, then they simply would have been destroyed by our Heavy Storm Dusters. So they had no ability to play back row. Sky Striker with no back row is just a bunch of 1500 attack monsters. So it is what it is. They could not possibly have won that game, especially considering we have Storming Mirror Force on our field to start bouncing all of the stuff back to deck. We have the Fair Welcome Labyrinth to negate and pop a card. It's just disgusting. So no, there was no way Sky Strikers could have won that, and that's what I mean. Whenever you're in a position where you have the early advantage stunned, you're able to slow your opponent down to a halt, you're in control, and if you maintain that control, which you can do, then you find that you'll win an awful lot of matches, because our opponent simply did not have a way to break the control. So anyway, that's game number 3. Let's get into number 4. And lastly then, of course, what would be the point in showing off playing in the Diamond 1 tier if you're not going to show off play with the best deck in the game, Mathmech Cybers? Of course, the Cybers build is arguably not as good as the pure Mathmech build, so I'm not going to say this is the best deck in the game, but again, playing Mathmech to any sort of extent is usually a fair indication that you're going to get rocked. They're going to use Alambersion here, grabbing the Circular from their deck. Circular then sending their Nabla from deck to grave to summon itself. They're going to tribute the Alambersion to summon Nabla from the graveyard to trigger off Circular, grabbing, of course, Super Factorial from their deck. Nabla then is actually going to tribute itself. They're going to grab Diameter straight from the deck, which they're going to use to go into Balinx. Balinx is going to grab the field spell Salamangreat Sanctuary from their deck to their hand, then link 2 off into Splash Mage. Splash Mage basically having a built-in Monster Reborn, but also triggering the Gazelle. Gazelle's going to send Roar from deck to graveyard, so this is some sort of a Salamangreat, Code-Talker, Mathmech nonsense going on here. They're going to go into the Heat Soul. Heat Soul paying 1,000 to draw an extra card. They're going to go Spinny, send it to grave to boost up the Heat Soul simply so they can resummon it back to their field. Going into the Salamangreat, Mirage Stalio detaching material to summon out the Jaguar from deck. Set 3, pass. My nose is getting itchy just talking about this deck. They're going to pay 1,000 life points to draw yet another card here, so +2 so far off their Decode Talker Heat Soul. We're going to draw into our Fair Welcome Labyrinth off of our Ariana. They're going to Super Factorial here. Even with the Lord of Heavenly Prisons revealed in your hand, Laplacian, I'll let them summon out their monsters. First of all, Laplacian doesn't actually target a card, meaning he can still send our face down cards back to our hand. He hits our Fair Welcome Labyrinth in hand as well, which puts us in a very rough spot because we need our Welcome Labyrinth to resolve. We're going to activate it now. Luckily for us, our opponent does not actually negate it. He simply pays another 1,000 to draw another card. Decode Talker Heat Soul giving them +3 already, but we've got the lovely Labyrinth of the Silver Castle on the field, which now means our Ghastly Glitch is live. However, we need to be smart about when we use this. We need to use it quickly, because if he removes our Fiend monster, then we simply cannot activate the glitch. So he links off into the Sunlight Wolf here. This is what we were afraid of. The Mirage Stalio is going to try to bounce back our monster. I was kind of hoping he would target the back row. It does put us in a rough situation here where we're able to pop the monster, sending back Jack to the grave. We just hope to hit a really good card off of this. Unfortunately, our opponent uses Call by the Grave, and what's tragic about this now is we still get to use its effects, right? But now the card we hit off the top of the deck is random. And the cards that it reveals, right? So we're going to let this resolve. Summon Lord of Heavenly Prisons, set Pot of Extravagance on the off chance we survive. Then Backjack reveals Chaos Hunter on top of the deck, which was nothing. Caught by the Grave fizzles out, there's nothing to banish. And Backjack sets cards back on top of the deck in any order. The tragic thing about this is the 3 cards after Chaos Hunter were all trap cards. Ace Dragon's Prison was among them, which would have been absolutely game-changing in this situation. If we had Ace Dragon's Prison right here, life would have been very, very different. We would have been able to simply banish a lot of his Cyber's monsters here before he could even get the gas to start going. He's going to go into Update Jammer, then Microcoder into Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker, of course, having the ability to revive the Update Jammer from grave. Microcoder then grabbing him another Cynet card from his deck to his hand. He's going to grab the Cynet Conflict, an Omni-Negate Banish Trap card, which is yet again insane. Update Jammer making its way out, combining with the Sunlight Wolf to go into an untargetable access Code Talker. So long as he and Transcode point at each other, they cannot be targeted, and they gain 500 additional attack. It's not looking good for us. I'm simply going to speed the game up. We all know what happens next. Pops the Lord of Heavenly Prison, goes into battle phase, swings for 48, swings for 48, and that's GG's. Unfortunate situation, it really is. Whether or not Labyrinth was going to be able to compete with what is currently the best deck in the game, of course it wasn't, right? That's not the question we're here to ask. We know that it's not tier worthy, we know it's not ultra competitive. We're just here to talk about the deck, where it falls, what it does, what its shortcomings are, and what we can potentially do to patch those shortcomings. So that's game number 4. We're not going to linger on it too much. Let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, getting into the deck profile. Now, you're going to notice that this deck profile is probably going to be a bit shorter, simply because many of these cards are optional. There's not a lot of core cards here to this deck. We're going to talk about my particular build, though, just to sort of so you know exactly what I'm talking about, at least within the context of the game. So the Labyrinth monsters themselves, how do they actually work? Well, they all essentially function on the basis of searching out trap cards and gaining additional effects whenever your normal trap cards remove monsters from the field. It's that easy. So we're going to cover off those first, then we're going to talk about the other monsters, and then we'll get into the spells and traps. So first of all, Ariane, the Labyrinth Servant, will basically pitch a normal trap to grave from your field or hand, and will special summon another level 4 or lower fiend from your deck in defense mode. Now, level 4 or lower fiend is a very vague term. That could be anything, right? That could be lots of different things. This card holds a lot of potential usage in a lot of different mix-ups. Like for example in an Unchained mix, which we've been thinking about and will likely have a video on in the near-ish future. Ariane would serve a much greater purpose, but in this deck her only purpose is to search the deck for Ariana, the Labyrinth servant, who on summon will search your deck for a Labyrinth card and add it to your hand, like your Welcome Labyrinth, like your field spell, like your Labyrinth Archfiend. Right, so this is the searcher, this is the searcher of the searcher. So Ariane summons Ariana, Ariana actually does the business. Now they both have a common effect where if you remove a monster from the field through utilizing a normal trap card, then they both allow you to draw one card, then you can either special summon a fiend monster from your hand, or you can set one spell or trap card. Now the spell or trap of course isn't usable on the turn you set it, so normally you're going to want to utilize this effect to summon a powerful fiend monster. Then you've got the Labyrinth Archfiend, who will gain 400 attack for each normal trap in your grave with a different name. That is very useful. Starting at 2k, this guy gets up pretty big pretty quickly. Guy? Lady? I don't know. It's hard to tell. But this gets real big real quick, usually ending up at 3200, 3600 relatively routinely, sometimes even bigger. How do you summon it though? So it's very easy to summon. All you need to do is activate a trap card. Once you activate a trap, you get to utilize Labyrinth Archfiend's effect to special summon itself to the field, and not only does it come out to the field, it also brings with it any trap card that can only be activated when your opponent declares an attack. So you're looking for a trap card like Storming Mirror Force that says when an opponent's monster declares an attack. It has to have that line of text in it in order to be useful. So our two searchable targets are Fair Welcome Labyrinth and Storming Mirror Force. So this guy basically comes out to the field, gets you an extra card, and is pretty big, and as one last effect, so long as this guy is face up on the field, your opponent cannot target any other fiend monsters for attacks. So he protects all your monsters, gets huge, grabs you a battle trap, and generally speaking is a really useful card. The lovely Labyrinth of the Silver Castle. We were running this card at 2, I just don't like seeing it in the opening hand, it's really rough to see in the opening hand, so we did bump it down to 1. This is, of course, the boss monster of the deck, right? This is what this is. Whenever you're going to summon this card from your deck using Welcome Labyrinth, and occasionally you're going to recycle it using Labyrinth. There's no built-in summon conditions. That's what I think the biggest limitation on this card is. There's no... If this card had the same effect as Labyrinth Archfiend, as being able to summon itself when you activate a trap, I would even consider running this at 3, right? But because it doesn't have a built-in summoning condition, it can be really weak when you open it up in your hand. But everything else about the card is fantastic. Whenever it does actually hit the field, it means your opponent can't activate monster effects in response to your normal trap card's activation, so it basically turns all of your normal traps into super poly in a way. Kind of. They can still activate spells or traps in response, just not monsters, but that's most negates, right? Once per turn, during your turn, you can target a trap card in your graveyard, set it back to your field, but you can only use it so long as you control a normal... if you control a fiend monster, which will be most of the time. So it recycles a trap card back to the field, and like the other two monsters, our Ariane and our Ariana, whenever a monster is removed from the field by the effect of a normal trap card, you get the ability to either A, target a card on the field and destroy it, or B, destroy a random card in your opponent's hand. So you can sort of hand loop your opponent a little bit with this, or you can target and get rid of some particularly nasty cards. Sitting at 2900 attack doesn't make it small, it's definitely pretty large, but it's not the biggest thing in the world either, which means you're probably going to need some extra muscle from the likes of your Archfiend to get over a lot of major targets. But in the current sort of meta where things are, in terms of raw attacking power, relatively weaker, if you were to look at the likes of Mathmech, for example, 2900 usually isn't that bad. Getting into our other monsters then, so Absolute King Backjack is a phenomenal card, works exceptionally well in combination with something like Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. This card's incredible, right? So when it's sent to the graveyard, you will look at the top 3 cards of your deck and you'll put them back in any order you want. Then during your opponent's turn, you can banish it from your graveyard, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a normal trap card, you will set it to your field and it can be used on that turn. So basically what he does is it lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and then if, essentially speaking, if there's a trap card among them, you set it to your field during your opponent's turn, which is incredible. So Absolute King Backjack is really, really good. There's not a lot of things it doesn't do. especially in combination with Ghastly Glitch. So the way this card will work then is, skipping ahead a little bit, this will send a Fiend monster from deck to graveyard to pop an opponent's card. So what you'll normally do is, using this, you pop a card, then you send back Jack. Back Jack's to effect resolve, and you normally get to fetch yourself another trap card to use. So this is one of the biggest ways to generate card advantage, which is something that the deck really lacks. So you definitely need to be playing them at least one. You probably don't need two. If you really have another card you want to throw in here, for example, if you want to play Prosperity, you can play this guy at 1. It just means that you're not always going to have him in deck for Ghastly Glitch, but that's entirely up to you. So we'll put him at 2 for now. This Chaos Hunter, I think, is extremely underrated. Chaos Hunter is phenomenal, especially in this deck. Basically, so long as it's face up, your opponent cannot banish cards. Virtually everything in the meta right now wants to banish cards, with the exception of the initial Mathmech setup. Pretty much everything else wants to banish. Mathmech, of course, being the biggest deck in the game at the minute, so that's a big hole to be weak to. So that's, I can understand why people may be a little bit hesitant about that. It does stop things like the access code follow-up. It stops them from utilizing access code's effect, and it can be summoned during your opponent's turn simply by, in response to one of your opponent's special summons, you just discard a card to summon this. So very, very easy to summon, and a large part of its versatility in this deck comes with how easy it is to recycle off of Labyrinth. Also, having this card on the field makes your recycled trap cards off of your Queen live. It makes your Ghastly Glitch live. It means your Fair Welcome Labyrinth is live, because it's a Fiend monster. So there's quite a lot of synergy and crossover with this deck. You never really brick on it, because anytime you open it, it's always a nice card to see. So I think Chaos Hunter is a phenomenal card in this deck, 100%. Playing it at 3 might be a bit much, but I definitely think it's good enough to be played at 3. You can cut it down if you want, but I think 3 is fine. Lastly, for our monsters, and this is probably going to be the one that annoys people, but the Lord of the Heavenly Prison. I know it's a UR. You have to play this at 3. You have to. The deck simply doesn't have the follow-up. It doesn't have the ability to recur in order to compensate for the possibility of getting completely blown out. You want to see this card in your hand as much as you possibly can. Simply because it protects you from the like of Lightning Storm, it protects you from the likes of Harpy's Feather Duster, from all of these big powerful blowout cards, you know, Twin Twisters, everything like that. Lord of Heavenly Prisons protects you from, and if you don't have that protection, it's not looking good for you. It really isn't. You want to see this as much as you possibly can. I appreciate it's a UR, I appreciate not everybody has it, not everybody likes it, but I would say it's virtually mandatory to play at 3. And its secondary effect is pretty good as well. Being able to special summon it from your hand on a 3k body is really good, especially considering you can also set straight from your deck something like Pot of Extravagance to be used on the following turn, because like I said, this deck doesn't generate advantage very easily, so having additional cards that will get you to your cards to generate that advantage is always very, very important. So Extravagance is a real good one to set. Again, skipping ahead a little bit. But Lord of Heavenly Prison, it's virtually mandatory to play at 3. Getting into the spells, we only run a couple of different spells. We run Pot of Duality and Pot of Extravagance. Basically 2 cards designed to generate us a little bit more advantage. We weren't initially playing Duality, but there's no reason not to play it unless you're in like turn 4, turn 5. Most of the time you can do all of your summoning during your opponent's turn. You can cut Duality, it's definitely not key, but I think it's just really good to be able to get into the cards you need to see. You might even want to cut one for Prosperity if you want. The only reason I like running Duality over Prosperity in this particular build is I want to be able to use both Extravagance and Duality in one turn. That is really good for the amount of cards you will generate off of it. Duality, Extravagance, draw 2, then Duality will pick a card from the top of your deck, add it to your hand. Very good. So I would say running both is fine. Then we've got 2 copies of Labyrinth. You can run it at 3, it's a very powerful card. If you set a Welcome Labyrinth normal trap, which is basically one of these 2, whenever you activate it, you can then destroy a card in the field. So it means that your Welcome Labyrinths have an additional pop on them, which means that Fair Welcome Labyrinth pops 2, and your Welcome Labyrinth summons a monster and pops a monster. So it basically means that you're going plus on all of your trap cards. Then if you use a non-Labyrinth normal trap card, you get to special summon a Fiend monster from your hand or your graveyard. That's with the recycling of the Silver Castle with the recycling of Chaos Hunter comes into play, because you can continually loop them off of your field spell. So being able to loop Chaos Hunter over and over is nuts. It really is. Getting into our normal traps, for the most part, these are all optional, except for Welcome Labyrinth. And for Welcome Labyrinth, I would say you need to run at least one of. And I would say Ghastly Glitch is like... Ghastly Glitch is core, alright? Fight me. Ghastly Glitch is too good not to have. But we're going to go through all of the ones that I've chosen. Compulsory Evacuation Device, target a monster, bounce it back to the hand. Really good against Branded, really good at disrupting a lot of link-based strategies. Very solid card, plus it's cheap. Eradicator Epidemic Virus. This is one of those cards where you're not going to use this in every single game, right? This is optional. You can take this out. But basically, you tribute a Dark Monster with 2500 attack or more, which is going to be Lord of Heavenly Prisons, your Silver Castle, Chaos Hunter, or Labyrinth Archfiend, so plenty of targets. You tribute those... Oh, let me grab the card back. Tribute one of those and then declare either spells or traps. Check your opponent's hand as well as every card they draw for the next 3 turns, and if you see any of the card type that you declared, you destroy it. So if you're playing against the likes of Labyrinth, if you're playing against the likes of Eldritch, playing against those types of decks, you flip it up, you declare a trap, bang, no more traps. Completely done, sort of dealt with. You're playing against Sky Strikers, you're playing against Runic, you're playing against anything like that, you declare spells. All of their spells are gone, those decks are completely dead then. Of course there are exceptions and there are sort of workarounds for those decks, but you're going to really heavily limit how much utility they're able to generate from what the actual core of their deck is. So this is absolutely brutal in certain matchups, right? And that's the problem. There are going to be matchups where this card does absolutely nothing. For example, consider Mathmech. This does nothing against Mathmech unless you're able to catch a super factorial in their opening hand, right? Which isn't going to happen. It does not happen. So it's not very good in every matchup. It's not very good against Sword Soul or Mathmech, which are, you know, obviously tier 1. And those are the big ones you sort of want to counter. So I would understand an argument in taking these out for now. But again, I just don't like Runic. So moving on. The one of Storming Mirror Force, purely to be set off of Labyrinth Archfiend's effect, shuffling everything back to hand is simply really strong. It's just good. And nothing else to say there. Heavy Storm Duster, destroy up to 2 spells and traps in the field. Having trap card removal is really good, especially considering there's no cost associated with this card, other than the fact you can't conduct your battle phase. But in general, being able to set this card to take out a Runic Fountain, to take out a Sky Striker multi-roll, to take out a lot of these big sort of cards, or even just to wipe out a bunch of set cards in your opponent's turn, is very good, of course. Considering there's no cost to it, I think this card is solid. Of course, you can take it out. Not every deck plays back row, so not everyone likes playing back row removal, but I do think the Heavy Storm Duster is strong enough to use, absolutely. Double Imperm, of course, Imperm is one of the best normal traps in the game. It gives you some interruption on your opponent's turn if you're forced to go second. And it's also still searchable off of Imperm. The reason we're running 2 of all of these traps, by the way, is so we can use the next card on our list, Trap Trick, to search for them. So Trap Trick says you can banish a normal trap from your deck and set another copy of that card to your field, and it can be used that turn, but for the rest of that turn you can only utilize 1 trap card. So by running 2 of all of these cards, it basically means they're searchable off of Trap Trick, and thus you can set them directly to the field from the deck. We're not running 2 of Storming Mirror Force and Fair Welcome Labyrinth. 1, they're simply not as good as all of these other cards. You're never really going to search for them, and they're primarily here to be searched off of Labyrinth Archfiend, right? Moving on, we've got Ace Dragon's Prison, disgusting in a whole ton of matchups. This is like your tier 1 counter, right? This counters basically everything on the tier list at the minute. The only deck it's not really that great, well, there's a couple. It's not that great against Branded, because their Mirror Jade is a worm, and you can't really banish it then. So it's not that great against Branded. It's not that great against Runic. It does nothing against Runic at all. But that's part of why we're running Duster. But against virtually everything else, this card is nuts. Right? You basically steal a monster from your opponent's graveyard. You can either just keep it. So against the likes of Branded, I'm just stealing their Mirror Jade from the grave, and I'm just keeping it. It's huge. It's a 3k attack. It is of course negated, and then you get the option to banish a monster from both players' fields so long as they hold the same type. It does not necessarily have to be the monster that you summon. You can banish a monster from yours, a monster from theirs, so long as they have the same type, right? So there is a little bit of versatility there, but there's not really very many great fiend type strategies in the meta right now, so it's basically going to be just utilizing the monster you steal. Very good against zombies, as you saw in our first round. Very good against Mathmech. Very good against any sort of code talkers. Very solid against Sword Souls in particular, stopping their proto summons, stopping their Taya. Ultimately, very, very solid on the Ice Dragon's Prism there. Absolutely. Welcome Labyrinth. Will special summon out a Labyrinth monster from your deck and locks you into fiends, right? So you special summon a Labyrinth monster from deck. If a monster leaves the field because of a normal trap card's effect, you can then set this card back to your field from your graveyard. So yeah, it basically recycles itself. That's why you don't necessarily need to run 3. If you don't have 3 and you want to save the credits, you can run 2. I ran 2 for quite a long time and I didn't notice a massive difference in terms of performance. So you can run 2, but I think 3 is probably a little bit better. It's basically going to be here to summon out your Silver Castle directly from deck. Fair Welcome Labyrinth is our secondary target to search off of Archfiend Labyrinth. When a monster declares an attack while you control a fiend, you can negate the attack, target a card on the field and destroy it, and then set a non-Labyrinth normal trap card from your deck. So basically it pops one, negates an attack, and sets another trap from deck, which is amazing. And remember, it's when a monster declares an attack, meaning you can activate this card in response to your own attacks. You want the attack of a weaker monster like Ariana, even Jack, if you want the attack of anything like that, you can negate your own attack to pop an opponent's card and search your deck for another trap card. So it's really, really solid. Running any more than one of it is probably not that great because it is searchable off of Archfiend, and it's not going to be applicable in every single situation. But having at least one of it, I would say, is fairly important, especially considering our last card, Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. This will, as long as you control a fiend monster, target a card on the field, destroy it, and then send a fiend from deck to graveyard. That's going to trigger off the backjack combo that we talked about earlier in the deck profile. So Ghastly Glitch is absolutely brutal as well. Really, really solid card. I absolutely love this card. And yeah, what do we do in the extra deck? Go nuts. Extra deck does not matter. 0 cards. We put these in as a bit of a meme on stream. You literally, you can run 15 copies of 5-headed dragon for all I care. Extra deck has 0 purpose. I will say, include at least 1 Linkuriboh, just in case you need to trigger off Backjack's effect. If you have 3 Linkuriboh, put in 3 of it, just to make sure you don't banish it off of Extravagance. But it's like the only card you will use in the extra deck. Don't forget, you're locked in the fiends for most of the game, so you realistically, if in an ideal world, you probably want an extra deck that looks something like this, where you're just bumping up all of your fiend monsters, and then any other good fiends I can think of. I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't matter at all. You sort of get the point, right? It's just a case of play whatever the hell you want. It does not matter. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. That's the deck. Now, the deck is not that strong, right? It is very good in certain matchups. It can be very oppressive if it starts off strong, but if it opens up weak, or if they're playing against an opponent that has the out, or is simply playing a strategy that's so aggressive they can play through the interruption, it becomes very hard for this deck to catch back up once it hits behind. So that's the deck's biggest problem. There are a few variants and ideas we can play to minimize that though, like Unchained, for example, which is one we're currently looking into, or Layer of Darkness, which is another that I am considering. We talked about this one a good bit on stream. I don't think this one is the way, right? I'm gonna be straight up with you. I don't think Layer of Darkness is it. But it's an idea, and we're gonna mess with it anyway. You know, it could be fun. We'll probably play it casual. But yeah, we're probably going to look at Unchained, probably going to look at Layer of Darkness, other ways of making this deck good and useful. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. So if you've got this far in the video and you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? You might as well while you're here if you've got this far, and like the video if you have watched all the way to the end. And with that, I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.